Well, what does this mean? What does this mean for BYU? Okay, well, there's going to be a three quarterback battle here. It's going to be a 3 QB battle, and you have basically your version of, I just rattled off CJ Carr as the name at Notre Dame. That's the young freshman that has a ton of upside and is probably going to be the guy at some point at Notre Dame. But the question becomes, would that be this year? Is he ready to do it this year, or do they need a Jake Retzlaff to come in and be the guy for a season? At BYU, that's Bear Bachmeier, who spent I'm going to say a semester at Stanford. They called it a quarter right there on the quarter system. He spent a little bit of time at Stanford after being a really high-profile quarterback recruit in the 2025 class who had offers from Oregon, Bama, Notre Dame, Georgia. I mean, he had like offers to go basically anywhere. Chose Stanford. Troy Taylor gets fired, the head coach there, and then he opts to hit the transfer portal after spring ball. So he was not at BYU for spring, which is a key point here to bring up, because that then becomes really difficult to navigate your way to become a starter right away if you don't have spring ball. Like if Bear Bachmeier had spring ball to go out there and play, I feel like that would have made a large difference in terms of the chances that he could take over. But he's got talent. He's dual threat, 6,800 passing yards, 59 touchdowns on his high school career. He had 1,700 rushing yards and 30 TDs. Like, this is a dude that has all the talent that you could want. And, we just made a big deal out of BYU signing a 5-star quarterback who may not play until 2027 in Ryder Lyons. But, man, Bear Bachmeier is the guy maybe for the next couple of years. We'll see. We'll see. I was reading about him today and saw that Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator, said this about him, quote, "I don't usually make bold predictions, but I think he's going to be a great player at BYU." So he felt confident enough, a guy who says he's not into making bold predictions like this, he felt confident enough in saying that he is going to be a stud. But I think that most at BYU, and I think I'm seeing this expressed in the chat, I think most at BYU expect that the starter will be former Utah State quarterback McKay Hillstead, who definitely has some talent and, was competing with Trayson Bourget as for the backup job as a Western Michigan transfer. It seems to me to be like a higher floor, lower ceiling kind of a guy. I'm sure most would say a higher ceiling for McKay Hillstead. Played a couple games as a freshman in 2023 at Utah State. Really lit it up his first couple of starts, and then had a concussion. Struggled a little bit after that when he came back. The numbers weren't all that great from that first year. But, man, I know some highlight reel runs in the spring. Was seeing some highlights, reading about that and what happened in spring ball at BYU. And is a guy that has some big playability if he can cut down on the turnovers. He did have 11 touchdowns, 8 picks in 2023 at Utah State. So it's not a disaster. Like, this is far from a disastrous situation for BYU. If you're talking about what's going to happen here at QB, like you've got three. Like, I would say, looking at this in 2025, because remember what I just outlined about Retzlaff had these options. He can go, he can leave. There's a lot of ways players can leave very easily through the transfer portal to get more money. Lots of reasons they can leave and lots of ways they can leave, right? To have 3 quarterbacks that at least seem like they all bring something like this to the table is a pretty damn good situation. It's hard to hang on to guys, like a McKay Hillstead, who had to go into this year looking at like, well, I'm looking at next season. Hopefully I can be the guy next year. And then I just watched BYU sign Ryder Lyons. So it's like, hopefully I can be the guy to like bridge a gap for a year or something in between there. And, oh, by the way, now Bear Bachmeier's on the roster. So you've got your talented young stud. You've got a high floor guy who could go in there and kind of steady the ship in Trayson Bourget, or you've got another somewhat experienced option who also seems to have some real big playability that's a transfer in the fold. So I don't know, man. That really screams to me like a as good a situation as you could ask for right now. Like, I'm a K-State fan, and it was like last year K-State had to go out and pay a bunch of money in the transfer portal to bring in Taquan Roberson, who had started some games at UConn, but really to go bring in like that kind of experienced guy. And I mean, I was biting my fingernails for a while there before they got him. Like, can they actually go get somebody like that? I'm a little bit worried here. Otherwise, you would just go straight to like your Bear Bachmeier, but somebody who did not have that pedigree coming out of high school, like somebody that young. So that I will say is like a concession here for BYU fans, or like something that should make you feel a little bit better. Having said all that, like, what does it actually mean in terms of like my opinion of what I would do with BYU right now? I mean, I do think I'd drop them from being like a fringe tier 1, tier 2 team in the Big 12 to probably tier 2/tier 3 for right now, until I see what the quarterback situation is going to look like. That really, to me, is just kind of I would call it like an uncertainty tax because of like when this is happening. I mean, there's going to be no spring ball for one of these quarterbacks to know, like, hey, I'm the guy. I get the number 1 reps. You unfortunately went through an entire spring practice with Jake Retzlaff and still believing that he was going to be the guy. So I think it's fair to put an uncertainty tax on it. But if you're a BYU fan and you want to sit here and say, like we just had in the chat a moment ago, hey, I think BYU is going to be better off. I think they'll do even better with a guy with upside within the program right now, of which there are definitely 2 that seem to have considerable upside. I wouldn't crush you for that opinion, but you do have to just be putting a lot of faith in that right now, as opposed to, tangibly knowing what that's going to look like. Look, I'll be honest. I'm not here to trash on Jake Retzlaff's ability as a player. He clearly was pretty good last year for BYU. But how many quarterbacks in the Big 12 have a higher ceiling than Jake Retzlaff? I mean, at least 5, 6, 7 Big 12 starting quarterbacks probably had a higher ceiling than Retzlaff. The thing about him is that he's got a lot of experience, obviously knows the system, and is a guy that, as he began to start cutting back on some of the negative plays and turnovers, like, becomes more and more effective. And you would expect that with an offseason of growth and all that, working with Aaron Roderick some more, the receivers that he knows, the whole infrastructure, you would expect him to get better. Like, I get it. I still think he would be the best option at quarterback there in all likelihood. But this is not losing Sam Levitt, put it that way. This is not losing Sam Levitt. I think they're Sawyer Robertson, considerably higher ceiling, I think, than Jake Retzlaff. Avery Johnson, wildly inconsistent as he was last year. Maybe wildly is a bit too strong, but he was pretty inconsistent last year. I think he's got a much higher ceiling than Jake Retzlaff, right? Like, you can start going down the list. Jalen Daniels, we've seen a much higher ceiling from Jalen Daniels at Kansas before as a quarterback. So just some hopefully comforting thoughts for BYU fans on that, even as I kind of drop them mentally a tier for right now in where I think they will be. The last thing, too, that I will say that I think should provide some level of comfort for BYU fans is, like, if there is a culture in the Big 12 that can withstand something like this and probably has a better chance to make this work than a lot of places, I think BYU is in that group. I think BYU is Kalani Sitake's got a really rock solid culture. This is not a place that, will kind of go blow with the wind, right? Where the wind's blowing with your starting quarterback this year, and you're going to be totally beholden to that. And it's a pretty rock solid foundation that's built there. They played good defense. Jake Retzlaff was not like the identity of the team last year. I think there's a lot of reason to believe that this can be mitigated. Maybe that's the way to put it. Mitigated, at least at the beginning of the year, and then see if, hey, the new guy, when given the opportunity, taking the reins, can really take off with it. So that's kind of how I see it.